The Galactic Academy of Knowledge was alive with energy. Students from every corner of the galaxy walked through shining halls, their voices echoing in dozens of languages. But behind the laughter and calm, something dark had begun to move quiet, unseen. And dangerous? It started with whispers. Humans don't belong here. They act like they understand us. They're too reckless, too unpredictable. At first, no one took those words seriously. But soon, posters appeared on walls, anonymous. Hateful messages warning students to stay away from the humans. Alina noticed one pinned near the cafeteria door. She tore it down before Rark could see it. But of course he already had. His deep voice rumbled softly behind her. "You cannot hide it." She turned, guilt flashing in her eyes. "I didn't want you to worry." He looked at the shredded poster in her hands. "It does not anger me. It disappoints me." Alina frowned. "Some people just fear what they don't understand. We'll deal with it." He nodded slowly. "Then I will protect you." She laughed lightly, trying to ease the tension. "You don't have to protect me, Rark." But his expression stayed serious. "It is not a choice. You are my friend." That evening, the Academy's central courtyard was filled with students celebrating the end of exams. The twin moons glowed above, music played, and lights shimmered across the trees. Alina sat with a group of classmates, laughing, while Rark stood nearby, quietly observing. He didn't join the games or dances. His size and sharp claws made most people nervous. Still, he stayed close just in case. Then, a sudden shout broke through the music. A group of students from the upper levels approached, their clothes marked with strange symbols. One of them, a tall reptilian alien named Vether, glared at Alina. "So this is the famous human?" he sneered. "The one who tamed a Gorvath." The laughter around the courtyard faded. Alina stood up slowly. "I didn't tame anyone," she said calmly. "He's my friend." Vether's eyes narrowed. "Friends? With a beast?" Ark's claws flexed slightly, the sound sharp against the ground. "Be careful," he warned. Vether smirked. "Or what? You'll attack me? Show everyone what you really are." The crowd tensed. Alina stepped between them. "Rark, don't." Her voice was quiet but firm. For a long moment, Rark didn't move. His instincts screamed at him to defend her, to fight. But then he remembered her words, "You're not a monster, Rark." He slowly relaxed his stance, lowering his arms. "I will not fight," he said. Vather laughed cruelly. "Then you're not just a monster, you're a coward too." Before Alina could respond, an instructor appeared. "Enough," she ordered. "Return to your dorms." The crowd dispersed quickly, but the look in Vether's eyes promised this wasn't over. Later on the dorm balcony, Alina and Rark watched the stars. The wind was cool, and the world below shimmered with city lights. "You did the right thing," she said softly. Rark's deep voice was quiet. "It did not feel right, I know. But walking away takes more strength than fighting." He turned to look at her. "You are small, Alina Ward, yet you speak like a leader." She smiled. "Someone has to keep you out of trouble." He didn't laugh, but his yellow eyes softened. "You would have made a strong Gorvath." "Thanks," she said, pretending to bow. "I'll take that as a compliment." But peace didn't last. Within days, small accidents started happening around the academy. A power line failed near the human dorm. A fire alarm went off during their class. Someone hacked into the academy's data system and sent false messages. Blaming humans for the disruptions, the administration investigated. But the culprits were always gone before being caught. Alina grew quieter each day. Rark noticed one evening, as they worked on a small experiment, she sighed. "Do you think they'll ever accept us?" Rark didn't answer immediately. He adjusted a control panel carefully, then said, "They will have to. Truth cannot be hidden forever." She looked up at him, her eyes tired but determined. "You really believe that?" "I must," he said. "If I do not believe it, then I am still the monster they say I am." She smiled faintly. "You know, for someone who doesn't smile much, you say some really hopeful things." He tilted his head slightly. "Hope is a human idea. You taught me. A few nights later, things changed completely. Alina was returning from the library when she heard movement behind her. The hall was dim, the lights flickering. Before she could turn, several shadows stepped from the corners. It was Vather and his followers. "Well, look who's alone," Vather hissed. "No monster to protect you now." Alina's pulse quickened. "You don't have to do this," she said calmly. "We're supposed to be classmates. We're nothing alike," he growled. "Humans don't belong here." Before he could move closer, a deep growl filled the corridor. "Step away," Rark's voice thundered. Vather turned, startled. Rark stood at the end of the hall, his glowing eyes fixed on them. His presence filled the space, heavy and powerful. "Of course," Vather sneered. "The beast comes running." Lena moved quickly, placing herself between them again. "Rark, please. Don't." For a moment, no one moved. The tension was so thick, it felt like the air itself would break. Then Rark took one step forward, his voice low but calm. "You will not harm her. Leave now." Something in his tone, steady, controlled, commanding, made even Vather hesitate. The group backed away slowly. "This isn't over." Vather spat before turning and disappearing into the shadows. Alina exhaled, trembling slightly. That was close. Rark lowered his head to her level. "You are safe now." She smiled weakly. "You didn't even raise your claws."
Ow!
"I did not need to," he said simply. "They saw what I could do, and what I chose not to." She stared at him, realizing the truth of his words. Strength wasn't always about fighting. Sometimes it was about control. The next morning, the entire academy was buzzing with the story. They say the Gorvath faced Vather and didn't attack. He scared them off without even touching them. Maybe humans and Gorvaths aren't so bad after all. For once, the whispers carried respect instead of fear. When Rark entered class, no one turned away. A few even nodded politely. Alina smiled when she saw it. "Looks like you're changing minds," she whispered. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "but only because you believed first." Later that week, Rark was summoned to the dean's office. The dean, an old Avrian with silver wings, looked at him carefully. "You have shown restraint, Gorvath, and in doing so, you have shown leadership. Many have noticed." "I did what was right," Rark replied. "Sometimes," the dean said, "doing what is right changes more hearts than any victory." When Rark left the office, students passing by gave small respectful nods. No one whispered anymore. That night, Alina and Rark stood again beneath the stars, the academy quiet around them. "You changed them," Alina said softly. "Without violence, without fear, you changed them." Ark's eyes glowed faintly in the starlight. "No, we changed them." She smiled. "You really believe that, don't you?" "Yes," he said. "Because of one human who was not afraid of a monster?" Lena looked up at him, her eyes full of warmth. "You were never a monster, Rark. You just needed someone to remind you." He gave a slow nod. "And now, I will remind others." The stars above seemed brighter that night, as if the galaxy itself had noticed their friendship, an unlikely bond between two souls from different worlds, proving that courage and kindness could rewrite even the darkest stories. And though the threat had not vanished completely, Rark knew one thing for certain: as long as he stood beside Elena Ward, no shadow in the galaxy could make him doubt who he truly was anymore. The calm at the Galactic Academy of Knowledge never lasted long. It was just after the morning classes when alarms blared through every hall. The warning lights flashed red, bathing the academy in a pulsing glow. Students rushed from classrooms, some crying, some shouting. Alina and Rark were in the laboratory, examining a minor experiment when the sirens began. "Another prank?" Alina asked nervously. Rark's eyes glowed sharply. "This is no prank." He could sense the danger immediately. A parasite, a strange and deadly organism, had infiltrated the academy's ventilation system. It spread quickly, infecting machines, and could harm living beings if left unchecked. "People are panicking," Alina exclaimed. "What do we do?" Rark's claws flexed instinctively. We protect those who cannot escape. Follow me. The corridors were chaotic. Alien students of all shapes and sizes ran in every direction, some tripping over one another in fear. Smoke and a strange green mist filled the air. Rark, it's everywhere. Alina shouted over the alarms. He took her hand. Stay close. Do not panic. Fear is the real danger. The two of them moved through the hallways, helping those who had fallen and guiding frightened students toward safety. Ark's sheer size and presence cleared the way. Wherever he walked, even the strongest currents of panic seemed to part. Alina marveled at his calm. You make it look easy, she said. Rark shook his head. It is not easy. It is necessary. They reached the central reactor, the core of the Academy's power and ventilation systems. The parasite had already reached the control panels, its tendrils creeping along wires and circuits. The lights flickered dangerously. Alina stepped forward. We have to stop it manually. The automated systems are failing. Rark's yellow eyes narrowed. The radiation here is deadly. You cannot stay. I'm not leaving you, she said firmly. We do this together. He hesitated. She was small, fragile, and human, completely vulnerable. But he saw the determination in her eyes. It reminded him of why he had come to trust her, why he had chosen to believe in humans. Then we move quickly, he said. Follow my lead. Inside the reactor room, the parasite writhed across every surface. Its tendrils were sharp, almost mechanical, yet organic, pulsing with energy. It hissed when they approached, reacting to their presence. Rark moved first. His claws sliced through the infected wires, careful to avoid damaging the core systems. Sparks flew and smoke filled the room, but he worked with precision and strength. Alina followed, her hands steady as she adjusted control panels, rerouted energy flows, and guided the reactor back to stability. You're incredible, she said. Shouting over the alarms, Rark glanced at her. No, you are incredible. Humans can adapt in ways even Gorvaths cannot. A tendril shot toward Alina. Without thinking, Rark threw himself between her and the parasite. His claws blocked the strike, sparks flying against his armored skin. He felt the energy burn against him, but didn't flinch. Rark, Alina shouted, you're going to get hurt. I do not care, he said calmly. Your life is more valuable. Together, they continued. Rark destroyed the largest tendrils while Alina recalibrated the core systems. Every second counted. The parasite's influence grew stronger by the minute. At one point, a massive pulse of energy surged from the core, knocking Alina off her feet. Rark lunged, catching her in his arms with careful precision. Are you all right? He asked, his deep voice almost gentle. Alina nodded, brushing dust from her clothes. Thanks to you, he only said, stay close. We are not done. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The parasite had nearly taken control of the entire Academy's power system. Without the combined effort of human ingenuity and Gorvath's strength, the facility would have been lost. Rark realized something vital. He needed to reach the parasite's origin point, a junction deep within the reactor. The radiation there would burn most species, but his body could withstand it longer than hers. You should go first, he said. I'm not leaving you. She shouted. He looked into her eyes, seeing the same fierce determination that had first drawn him to trust humans. Then we proceed together, carefully. With her guidance and his protection, they advanced through the glowing, pulsing corridors of the reactor. Each step brought more danger. The parasite lashed out with tendrils that could tear through metal and flesh alike. Rark blocked most of them, but a few grazed his armor, leaving burns and marks. Alina moved with surprising speed, rerouting energy channels and sealing passages before the parasite could spread further. Finally, they reached the core junction. The parasite pulsed violently, sensing its potential defeat. Alina examined the controls and noticed a weak point. Small panel where the parasite's connection to the reactor could be cut. I need you to hold it steady, she said to Rark. Rark crouched low, his massive hands bracing the machinery. Sparks flew around him, yet he remained calm, steady, precise. Alina connected the last override, and a bright flash of energy surged. The parasite shrieked and writhed, but slowly it began to lose control of the system. Its tendrils recoiled, shriveling and fading into smoke. Rark exhaled. "It is done," Lena smiled, though exhaustion showed in her eyes. "We did it. Together." The alarms stopped. The emergency lights returned to normal. The students, who had been evacuated, rushed back, staring at the reactor in awe. Many whispered about the Gorvath and the human who had faced the threat without fear. Rark collapsed to one knee, exhausted but alive. Alina rushed to his side. "You're hurt," she cried. "I am functional," he said, brushing smoke from his armor. "No lasting damage. You risked yourself," she said, grabbing his arm. "Do you understand what you just did?" Rark looked at her, yellow eyes glowing softly. "I protected you. In the academy? That is enough." She shook her head, smiling despite the tension. "No, it's not enough. You saved everyone. You're a hero," he considered her words. On Vargan, a hero was a fighter who destroyed enemies. Here in the academy, a hero could be someone who saved others through courage, strength, and teamwork. Rark looked around at the students, all staring in admiration and newfound respect. For the first time, he understood that heroism was not just about power, it was about action, courage, and compassion. Later, in the infirmary, Rark sat quietly while medics checked his burns and scratches. Alina sat beside him, holding his massive hand carefully. "You were amazing," she said softly. "I did what I had to do," he replied. "No," she insisted. "You went beyond what was necessary. You didn't just fight the parasite, you protected everyone, and you stayed calm when others would have panicked. That's something extraordinary." Ark looked at her and realized she wasn't exaggerating. For the first time, he felt proud of his actions, not for power, not for strength, but for courage and loyalty. News of their bravery spread across the academy. Students no longer whispered in fear. They spoke in admiration. Aliens of all species approached them, asking questions, offering thanks, and seeking guidance. Even the instructors, who had once doubted the partnership, now nodded with respect when Rark passed. And through it all, Alina stayed at his side, smiling and joking lightly. "See? I told you, humans and Gorvaths could make a great team." Yerk's deep voice rumbled softly. "Perhaps. But it is your courage that guided us," Alina laughed. All right. You do most of the heavy lifting. I'll take the credit for guidance." He tilted his head. "You guide more than you realize. Without your mind, my strength would have been wasted." That night, the academy was quiet, the stars shining above like scattered diamonds. Rark and Alina stood on the observation deck, overlooking the city and the calm they had restored. "You were amazing today," Alina said quietly. "You were amazing too," Yerk replied. For a long moment, they stood side by side, watching the lights flicker below. They had faced a threat together, survived, and saved lives. But more than that, they had learned something important. True strength was not just in power, it was in courage, in loyalty, and in trusting others. Rark looked at Alina. Remembering her words from weeks ago, "You're not a monster, Rark. You just think you are now." After all they had done, he understood. Monsters were not defined by appearance or strength. They were defined by choice, and he had chosen well. He turned to her, a faint smile appearing on his serious face. "Perhaps the universe is not as cruel as I once believed," Alina grinned back. "And maybe, just maybe, we're making it better." The stars above twinkled as if agreeing. In that moment, Rark and Alina knew that no matter what darkness fell in the future, together they could face anything. The Galactic Academy of Knowledge was unusually quiet the morning after the parasite incident. Students walked more cautiously than usual, checking doors, inspecting hallways, and whispering about the events of the previous day in the cafeteria. Tables that were once full of chatter were now filled with curious stares. Everyone wanted to see the Gorvath and the human who had faced the parasite together. Rark entered the room, his heavy steps echoing softly. Most students froze as he passed, unsure whether to approach or move aside. Yet this time there was no fear, only admiration. Whispers of respect replaced the old murmurs of dread. Alina was already seated at their usual table, a small smile on her face. She waved him over. "Come on, big guy. You're holding up the line." He lowered his massive frame carefully into the chair beside her. "I am functional," he said simply. "You're more than functional," she replied with a grin. "You're legendary." He tilted his head. "Legendary?" "Yeah," she said, her tone teasing but sincere. "You saved the Academy. You faced danger without hesitation. You didn't just fight to inspired." Rark's yellow eyes softened. Praise was uncommon for his kind, especially from others outside his species. He looked around at the students now, watching quietly. Their expressions were no longer fearful, they were full of curiosity and respect. Later that morning, the Academy's dean, an aged Avrian with silver wings that shimmered in the sunlight, called an assembly. Students of every species gathered in the central hall, their eyes fixed on the stage. The dean stepped forward. "Yesterday, we witnessed something extraordinary," she began, her voice echoing across the room. "A crisis threatened every life in this academy. And yet, through courage, determination, and teamwork, it was overcome. 2 students, a human and a Gorvath, led the way. Their actions remind us all that strength is not measured by size or species, but by character and heart." Yark remained silent, standing beside Alina. The applause that followed was thunderous. Students cheered, clapped, and some even whistled in admiration. Alina whispered to him, "See? You didn't just survive, you made a difference." "I did not act for praise," he said quietly. "I acted because it was necessary. And that's exactly why it matters," she said. After the assembly, many students approached them, asking questions, offering thanks, or simply nodding in respect. One by one, Rark and Alina listened and responded. A young Varnak student shyly said, "I always thought Gorvaths were terrifying. But you both of you proved me wrong." Rark inclined his head. "Fear is not truth. Courage is—" The student smiled widely. "I'll remember that." Alina leaned close to Rark, whispering, "See, you're teaching them more than you know." He looked at her, realizing she was right. His actions were not just about stopping a threat, they were showing everyone the potential for good in every species, even one that had long been feared. That afternoon, Rark returned to the training hall. The instructors had arranged for him to demonstrate proper control of Gorvath's strength, not as a weapon, but as a tool for protection and collaboration. "Stand in the center," one instructor instructed. "Show how to lift and manipulate heavy objects without causing damage." Rark complied, carefully lifting massive blocks and moving them with precision. Alina assisted, giving instructions, timing movements, and offering guidance. The students watched, amazed at the Gorvath's ability to control such strength while remaining calm and careful. Many took notes, whispering among themselves about how humans and Gorvaths could learn from each other. After the demonstration, one small alien approached and said, "I never thought I'd see a Gorvath behave like this. You've changed my mind about your species." Rark only nodded. "Then change is possible." Alina smiled proudly. "And it's just the beginning." That evening, the Academy's observatory offered a rare view of the twin moons over the nebula. Rark and Alina stood together, silent, except for the faint hum of distant starships. "You know," Alina said softly, "most humans wouldn't have had the courage to face what we did yesterday." Rark looked at her. "And most Gorvaths would have acted without care, destroying anything in their path." She smiled. "Exactly. But together, we made a difference." He considered that it is unusual for 2 species so different to work in true harmony. "That's why it's special," she said. "Not many get to see it." He glanced at her. "You were never afraid of me." "I was curious," she corrected gently, "and brave. You taught me that fear is not always real, it's just something we can choose to face." Rark remained silent, realizing the truth in her words. Her bravery had inspired him to be more than what he thought he could be, and in turn, his strength had protected her and others. They stood quietly for a while, watching the stars, feeling the calm after the storm. The next morning, life at the academy slowly returned to normal. Students still whispered about the parasite, but the tone had changed. Where there was once fear and suspicion, there was now respect and curiosity. Humans and Gorvaths alike were viewed in a new light in the classroom. Mark took his seat beside Alina, their usual spot by the window. A few students hesitated before walking past, then gave polite nods. Alina leaned over. "See, people are noticing the right things now," Rock replied quietly. "Perhaps. But recognition is not why we acted," no, she said softly. "But it's nice to see that doing the right thing matters." He looked out the window, the twin moons rising over the distant cityscape. For the first time in his life, he felt accepted. Not just by one person, but by a community that had once feared him. By midday, the Academy's leadership had arranged for a small ceremony to honor all those involved in defeating the parasite. Rark and Alina were at the center, standing on a raised platform as the dean spoke. "You have reminded us that courage knows no species," the dean said. "Strength can be gentle, and bravery can be quiet. Rark and Alina exemplify the best of what we can achieve together." The crowd erupted into applause. Students of all species cheered, some stepping forward to shake hands or offer words of gratitude. Rark felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. He had been trained to fight, to survive, to dominate. But this acceptance, this admiration, was something entirely different. Alina nudged him gently. "You see, being a hero isn't just about fighting monsters. It's about standing up, helping others, and staying true to yourself." He nodded slowly. "I understand now." Later, in the quiet of the dormitory, Rark and Alina sat together, cleaning and repairing the tools and equipment damaged during the crisis. "You know," Alina said, "I think the Academy will never look at humans the same way again." "And Gorvaths?" Rark asked. "They'll see you differently too," she said. "No one fears the monster anymore. They see the friend." Rark studied her, his yellow eyes reflecting a soft glow. "Friend. Yes, that is true. You have been my first friend here. You've been mine too," she said. "And together, we've proven something important. Different species, different worlds, they can work together. They can trust each other. They can even save each other's lives." He nodded. "Then perhaps the galaxy is not as divided as I once believed," Alina smiled. "Exactly. And it starts with people like us." As the twin moons rose once again, Rark looked out over the academy. Below, students moved freely, some talking, others laughing. The halls no longer echoed with whispers of fear. Instead, there was curiosity, respect, and hope. Rark turned to Alina, who was quietly organizing the equipment. He extended one massive clawed hand. "Partners?" he asked. She looked at him, grinning widely. "Always." And as they left the lab together, side by side, the academy seemed brighter, safer, and more united than ever before. They had faced danger. They had faced fear, and they had faced each other in the process. They had proven the ultimate truth. Courage, kindness, and trust can triumph over darkness, no matter your size or species. For Rark, the Gorvath once feared as a monster, and Alina, the human who had never backed down, the galaxy was full of possibility. Together, it had shown what could be achieved when two very different beings refused to let fear define them. And for the first time, Rark truly believed monsters are only real if you let fear decide who you are. With Alina beside him, he chose differently. The stars above sparkled, as if the universe itself was nodding in approval. The massive doors of Station Virel opened with a deep mechanical hiss, revealing a long corridor filled with noise, smoke, and the smell of metal. Hundreds of alien workers moved through the hall, tall insectoids, thick-skinned reptilians, and creatures with too many eyes. Every step echoed across the cold floor, and then among them walked a human. Her name was Cadet Amelia Cross, a 23-year-old rookie engineer from Earth. She wore a simple gray uniform, her short brown hair tied neatly behind her head. Her boots clicked, nervously against the floor as she looked around at the strange faces staring back at her station. Varel was known as the edge of civilization. Orbiting a dying red star far beyond human space, it was a place for mercenaries, smugglers, and soldiers who wanted to disappear. No one came here unless they had something to prove or something to hide. Amelia had something to prove. When she received her assignment to Varel, most of her classmates laughed. A human? Out there with monsters? You won't last a week, one of them had said. But she didn't care. She wanted to serve. To show that humans were not weak, not fragile, not afraid of the unknown. Still, as she stood at the center of the docking bay surrounded by alien stares, a small part of her wondered if they had been right. A tall insectoid officer stepped forward, his mandibles clicking. "You must be the new engineer," he said coldly. "The human, sir," Amelia replied. Keeping her voice steady, "You'll report to Maintenance Sector C. Try not to get in the way," he said. Then walked off without another word. Amelia exhaled slowly and tightened her gloves. "Not a great start," she whispered, began walking. Maintenance Sector C was a maze of pipes, glowing cables, and humming machines. The air smelled like burnt oil, and the sound of engines never stopped. She met her small team, 2 short-tempered. Rel mechanics and 1 grumpy old droid who introduced himself as Fix-7. The aliens barely looked at her. They worked fast and loud, throwing tools, arguing in harsh voices. Amelia quietly picked up a wrench and joined in. At first they ignored her. Then they started testing her, giving her the dirtiest, hardest tasks. Fix-7 told her to clean the plasma vents. One Trell handed her a pipe 3 times her size just to see if she would drop it. She didn't complain. She didn't quit. She worked until her hands hurt and her clothes were soaked with sweat. When her shift ended, she walked back to her quarters with shaking arms but a small smile. She had survived her first day. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay on her bunk, staring at the dull metal ceiling. Listening to the hum of the station, outside her window, the red star flickered weakly. Somewhere beyond it, Earth was just a tiny blue dot, warm, safe. And so far away, "I'll make them see," she whispered to herself. Humans belong here too. The next day began like the first. Loud voices. Heavy work. Cold stares. But one pair of eyes watched her more carefully than the rest. High above the maintenance deck, behind a wall of reinforced glass, stood Cortel. The station's head of security? He was a massive reptilian creature, over 8 feet tall, his scales dark green with streaks of silver. His claws could cut through metal. His sharp teeth gleamed even in dim light. He was known across 3 sectors as the Predator of Nith, a warrior who once led an entire army during the Outer Rim Wars. Many feared him. Some even believed he had eaten his enemies alive. Now, he served as a commander on Station Varel, guarding it from smugglers and pirates. Most of the crew avoided him, they said. His eyes could freeze your blood if he looked too long, yet that day, those eyes were fixed on a single human. He had noticed her the moment she stepped off the transport ship. Unlike the others who bowed or turned away from his presence, the human rookie had only stared for a moment, not with fear, but with curiosity. Cordell didn't understand it. Humans were small, soft, and fragile. Yet this one walked through a den of predators like she belonged. He watched as she struggled with a heavy coolant pipe, refusing to ask for help. He saw her stay late to fix a faulty circuit while others went to rest. There was no strength in her arms, but there was fire in her will. When the alien workers laughed at her clumsy repairs, Cortel only growled quietly to himself. There was something about her persistence that reminded him of old soldiers, the kind who never gave up even when death was near. Later that evening, Amelia was carrying a box of spare parts when she accidentally bumped into something, or rather, someone. The parts scattered across the floor with a loud clang. She looked up and froze. It was Cortel. The commander stood like a living mountain, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim hallway light. His shadow covered her completely. "Human," he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "You are far from your section." "Sir, I was just returning these parts to storage," she stammered, kneeling quickly to pick them up. Cortal tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "Do you fear me?" Amelia paused. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "Should I?" The alien blinked slowly. Few dared to speak to him like that. After a long silence, he stepped aside and said simply, "Carry on." But as she turned the corner, she could still feel his eyes following her, not with hatred, but with curiosity. In the following days, strange whispers spread through the station. "Did you see the human? She talked to the Predator and lived. She doesn't flinch when he's near. Either she's brave or insane." Amelia ignored the gossip and focused on her work. But deep down, she remembered his question, "Do you fear me?" She didn't have an answer. 1 week later, during a routine inspection, the lights flickered and alarms began to scream. A voice echoed through the loudspeakers, "Warning! Reactor conduit rupture in Sector C. All personnel evacuate immediately." Chaos filled the corridors. Workers ran, shouting orders. The air smelled of ozone and burning plasma. Amelia grabbed her toolkit and ran against the flow of traffic. "The failsafe system is in Sector C. If it melts down, the whole station will go." "No, human. You'll die in there," shouted Fix7, but she didn't stop. Smoke poured from the vents as she crawled into the narrow service tunnel. The metal walls burned her hands and sparks rained from broken wires. She could barely see. The emergency light blinked red, painting everything in blood-like glow. Her communicator crackled. It was Cordell's voice. "Cadet Cross, return to the evacuation point." "That's an order." She coughed through the smoke. "Can't do that, sir. Someone has to close the manual valve. If the core breaches, no one gets out." There was a long pause, then a growl. "You are either the bravest or the most foolish creature I've ever met." Amelia reached the valve, but the handle was jammed. She gritted her teeth, using all her strength. The metal burned her palms, but slowly, inch by inch, it turned. The pressure gauge began to drop outside through the glass control wall. Cortell watched the tiny human silhouette fighting the heat and chaos alone. None of his soldiers dared go in after her. The temperature would melt armor in seconds, but she stayed. When the system finally stabilized, the alarms fell silent. The station was safe. A maintenance hatch opened, and Amelia stumbled out. Her face blackened with soot, her hand shaking. She smiled weakly. "Told you it could be fixed." Cordell stepped forward, catching her before she collapsed. His massive claws carefully supported her shoulders. Gentle, despite their size, the entire control deck stared in silence, for the first time in years. The Predator of Neth lowered his head to another being. "You saved them all," he said quietly. Amelia smiled faintly before fainting from exhaustion. Later, when she woke in the infirmary, she found a small metal insignia beside her bed, a security emblem. Marked with Cordell's name, the note attached said only 3 words, "You have earned respect." That day, everything changed. The human rookie was no longer a joke. She had faced fire where others fled. And somewhere deep inside the cold heart of a predator, something new was born. A protector's instinct. The alarms had stopped, but the memory of fire and smoke still lingered in every corner of Station Virel. Engineers worked day and night to repair the damaged reactor lines. The smell of melted metal and burnt wiring hung heavy in the air, and in the middle of it all, Cadet Amelia Cross lay in the infirmary. Her hands wrapped in white bandages, a patch of her uniform burned away. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of medical drones. She opened her eyes slowly. The ceiling lights were dim, and the sound of the station's engines rumbled faintly in the distance. Her first thought was simple: I'm still alive. Then she remembered the explosion, the heat, and the last thing she saw before collapsing, Commander Cortell's glowing eyes looking down at her. A soft mechanical voice interrupted her thoughts. "Welcome back, Cadet Cross," said Fix7, the old maintenance droid. Its rusted frame creaked as it moved closer to her bed. "Your reckless bravery has been the topic of every conversation aboard the station. Amelia tried to sit up. Did we save it? The reactor. Fix7's glowing eye blinked. Affirmative. The meltdown was stopped. You prevented a catastrophic event. Station survival probability increased from 6% to 99%. She smiled faintly. Then it was worth it. Before Fix7 could reply, the infirmary doors slid open with a heavy hiss. The room grew colder. Cortel stepped inside. Every nurse and droid froze. Even the air seemed to grow still when he entered. His tall frame filled the doorway, scales reflecting the light like polished stone. He carried no weapon. He didn't need one. His very presence commanded attention. Everyone. Leave, he said in a calm, deep voice. The nurses hurried out. Leaving Amelia alone with the commander, Cortel walked to her bedside, his heavy footsteps echoing softly. He looked down at her for a long moment, then spoke. You disobeyed an evacuation order. Amelia straightened slightly, wincing at the pain in her arms. Yes, sir. I did. You risked your life. Yes, sir. And you saved the station. Amelia blinked, unsure how to respond. I just did my job, Commander. Cortel's sharp eyes narrowed. Your kind calls that just your job? You entered a reactor conduit that would have killed 1 trillion in under 2 minutes. I couldn't let everyone die, she said quietly. The alien commander stood in silence for a moment. Then, to her surprise, he bowed his head slightly. Not much. But enough for everyone on the station to call it shocking. You have earned more than survival, he said. You have earned honor. Amelia wasn't sure what to say. Thank you. Commander? Cortel turned to leave, but paused at the door. Without looking back, he added, From now on, you will not walk alone. This station has teeth, and some of them bite without reason. Before she could ask what he meant, he was gone. 2 days later, Amelia returned to work. Her hands still hurt, but she refused to rest any longer. The other engineers stared at her as she entered the maintenance bay. Conversations stopped. Even the roughest aliens, the ones who used to mock her, stepped aside. Some nodded slightly. A few even saluted her. Fix7 rolled beside her, clicking happily. You appear to have become popular. Amelia chuckled softly. I think they're just surprised I'm not Ashes. But her smile faded when she noticed the large shadow standing near the reactor control gate. Cortel was there again. He wasn't in armor this time. Only a plain security uniform, but his presence was still enormous. He crossed his arms as he watched her inspect the new coolant lines. Commander? She greeted politely. He gave a small nod. Observation duty. Amelia raised an eyebrow. You mean you're watching me? Yes, he said simply. Do you do this for everyone? No. She tried not to laugh. Then I guess I should feel honored. You should, Cortel said seriously. Honor is not given easily. For a moment, the silence between them was awkward but not uncomfortable. She noticed that, despite his terrifying reputation, his eyes were not cruel. They were sharp, yes, like a predator's, but also thoughtful. As if studying a mystery he couldn't quite solve. Later that evening, Amelia went to the mess hall for dinner. Normally it was loud and chaotic, but tonight the room went quiet when she entered. Every species seemed to stop and look. Some gave respectful nods. Others whispered. But one group, a cluster of raw mercenaries, sat in the corner glaring. The Rolls were tall, gray-skinned aliens with slit-pupiled eyes and long claws. They didn't like humans. Too soft, too new, too lucky, as they called them. Amelia ignored them and sat with her tray of nutrient cubes. A shadow fell over her table. One of the Rawls leaned close. Human, he hissed. You think saving one reactor makes you strong? Amelia looked up calmly. No, it just means I did my duty. The alien sneered. Stay out of our way. The station is not your playground. Before she could answer, a deep voice filled the room. Sit down, Rawl. Every head turned. Cortel stood in the doorway, his gaze cold and sharp. The Rawl mercenary froze. Commander, we now... Alien sat instantly. Cortel walked toward Amelia's table. His claws clicked softly against the metal floor. Is there a problem? No, sir, Amelia said quickly. Just a misunderstanding, he nodded once. Good. Then, surprisingly, he sat down across from her. The entire hall went silent. For the next few minutes, no one spoke. The mightiest predator in 3 sectors was quietly sharing a table with the smallest human on the station. When he finally stood up, every eye followed him until he left. After that day, no one dared bother Amelia again. Weeks passed. The station repairs finished, and the regular rhythm of work returned. But something had changed, not just for Amelia, but for Cordell too. He began visiting Maintenance Sector C often, claiming to inspect security routes. But the workers knew the truth. He came to check on the human. Amelia didn't mind. Sometimes they even talked while she worked about old battles, about Earth, about how strange humans were to other species. You fight without claws, Cordell once said. You have no scales, no venom, no wings. Yet you challenge the universe, Amelia smiled. Maybe that's why we survive. We learn fast. He grunted approvingly. You adapt. That is strength. There was respect in his tone, rare and honest. But not everyone was pleased by their growing friendship. The raw mercenaries whispered in the shadows. They said the predator of Neth had gone soft, that the human had tamed him. In their pride and anger, they began to plan something dangerous. They watched Amelia's routines. They knew when she worked alone, when she took supply trips, when Cordell wasn't near, and one quiet night, as the station rotated into the dark side of the star, they decided to act. Amelia was in the lower storage bay, sorting spare plasma tubes. The hum of the station was steady, and she hummed softly to herself as she worked. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The air temperature dropped. Her wrist communicator beeped weakly, then died. She looked around. Hello, Fix 7? Anyone there? No answer. Then she heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Her heart began to race. Out of the shadows stepped 3 roll mercenaries, their eyes glowing faintly under the dim emergency lights. Evening human, one of them said. Looks like you're all alone. Amelia backed away slowly. What do you want? To remind you, the leader hissed, that predators eat prey. And you, human, are very small. Before she could move, the doors slammed shut behind her. She turned to run, but the leader grabbed her arm. She struggled, shouting, Let go. But he only laughed. Then, before any of them could blink, a loud crash filled the air. The door burst open. Cordell stormed in like a thunderclap. His eyes glowed with cold fury, his claws gleaming. Release her, he said, voice low and dangerous. The Rawl froze. Commander, we were only. Cordell's roar shook the entire chamber. Now, they released her instantly. Amelia stumbled back, breathing hard. Cordell stepped between her and the mercenaries, his scales bristling. If you ever touch her again, you will not leave this station alive. The Rawls fled without another word. When the room was silent again, Cordell turned to Amelia. His voice softened. Did they harm you? She shook her head, still trembling. No, I'm fine. He nodded slowly. They will not try again. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the small human and the towering predator. Surrounded by the quiet hum of machines, Amelia looked up at him and said softly, Thank you. Cordell's expression didn't change, but his eyes held something new. Pride. You have earned my protection, he said simply. From this day forward. That night, rumors spread across Station Varel like wildfire. The predator of Nith had defended a human. The deadliest creature aboard had chosen his side, and for the first time in its long arc history, the station whispered one truth with respect. Do not touch the human. She belongs under the predator's protection.